Don in London, hello. Yes, me, Donald. My video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. Oh, and by the way, it's March 20th, 2013. Yep, my video is about addiction to either substance or behaviour. One of my addictions must be politics, because it's budget day here in the UK, and our Chancellor doesn't seem to have very much money to spend. Now, why? Well, ideology, politics and economy don't always go together. And certainly if you don't have much experience of managing other people's money, maybe you ought not to be Chancellor. It's just an observation, really. Just because we think we can do something does not mean we should get the job. Just because we feel we ought to be able to do it, we feel we ought to be able to do something, does not mean we ought to be doing it. So why am I saying that? Well, we can be addicted to all sorts of things. My principal addiction turned out to be alcohol, because it covered up everything else I was addicted to, which included trying to be perfect with the right people in the right places at the right times. And on this striving to be perfect malarkey, I forgot the real part of what life is all about, is the journey and not the destination, as so many people know. It's so obvious to most people, life is in the journey and not the destination, but we're so busy thinking about the next thing that we're not here. We're so busy thinking about, I need to be at such and such a place by 4:30, or 2:30, or 11:30. If I don't get there, the world will collapse. And the simple answer is it won't. And I'm not suggesting tardiness or procrastination are virtues. I'm just saying sometimes we need to take stock, do a quick inventory of where we are and why, and what the hell is happening with my feelings, and why do I feel all over the place? Well, the simple answer is the very last thing we check on usually is how we feel about life. We're so busy doing and doing more. So in my case, I did more and more drink because it was a way of self-medicating away the conundrum of being a workaholic and a relationship-aholic as well. I was a great social networker. Even before there were social networks, I had more people than anybody could possibly imagine that I knew, because I just spent 24 hours a day doing it, and the job as well, and everything else as well. I'm not blowing my own trumpet. What I'm suggesting here is I was a bit superficial, and I was stretched too far for too long, and I burnt out. And all the way through, alcohol then started to become my best friend. I became codependent on it. It had power over me because I needed it to switch off and find oblivion. And then alcohol, well, I just drank 24/7 and I didn't know why. I couldn't get out of it. Trying to explain an addiction is very difficult, because if you don't have it, why on earth would you be listening to me, or even thinking about listening to me? So addiction is a very difficult thing, either to accept or admit to, until we're there. And nobody wants to be an addict or alcoholic. I guarantee it. There's no mileage in it, except that life becomes miserable, and it goes on over and over again, and most of us just don't want to wake up from it. We'd rather expire than try and get back on track. So there is a gift of desperation somewhere, and also a gift of desolation as well. And some people make it through and have a go at sobriety. Some people just cannot, and it's not their fault. So what am I trying to say here? Well, there's a way to live life sober. And what helps me more than anything, having had the professionals get me dry once or twice and put me back on track, and even revive me, there's a fellowship called AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the bedrock of living for me. If I put sober first, the rest of life will happen, and I'm more likely to be in the moment of now, rather than thinking I ought to be somewhere else right now. So we find ourselves in a place of serenity very often, which I never knew existed, and a peacefulness which I only ever experienced now and again. So more peacefulness and serenity happens one day at a time. So March 20th 2013, I have done some notes which I have here, 3 pages, which I will share. But if you're in the fellowship of AA, you know already that I don't speak for you. I only speak for myself and how sobriety is going. And if you're new to AA, the reason why I don't speak either for people in it, the fellowship, nor for the fellowship is because we don't have any leaders. We are but trusted servants. And we share our experience, strength and hope where we feel we can and what feels appropriate to do. So I did one video, sorry I'm squirming, I've got severe nerve damage problems today, and my L4, L5 slip discs are playing me up. So how does AA help me? Well, it helps me deal with the physical things that go on as much as anything else, by getting the right help at the right time, and also knowing what won't change and what can't be improved. So fellowship, what is it? I'm going to read the AA preamble and then share some of my words for today. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. So it's all about being sober, sharing experience, strength and hope as best we can wherever we choose to, and help other people to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, and I was far from that when I first got to an AA meeting. But I did get there in the end, a desire to stop drinking, and reluctant, and denial was in full flight. If there were a way out to keep on drinking, I would have. But I knew it was killing me. There are no dues or fees for AA membership, so it's free if you haven't got any money. And it's free if you have got money. It's just whether you choose to put a few pennies in to help pay for tea, biscuits, coffee and some literature, and the cost of the meeting space. So we never have great deals of money to argue over. We just keep it on a daily basis, pretty much, or what they call what we call who's they? We are. What we call a prudent reserve, which is enough money to pay the rent for the room. So we are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with anything. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. So AA is not any of those things, but you are. You are allowed to be in your sect, your denomination, your political party, your organisation or institution, and you can endorse or oppose causes, because that's your freedom, and that's nothing to do with AA. But you will hear about everybody else's stuff, because under the banner of anonymity we share our experience, strength and hope of reality. So our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And that's that. End of story. Not blooming likely. It's like anything that's growing and changing. The fellowship of AA grows and changes, as does the fellowship. So it doesn't remain the same. But there are 12 steps or 12 principles suggested to live life freely, which are pretty good. They're timeless suggestions which work. And they enable me to have an emotional and spiritual journey today. So I say emotional and spiritual journey, where feelings fit in the moment of now. Emotional feelings fitting in the moment of now. Spiritual. And that's good for me. It means I know where I'm at most of the time. And if things get a bit difficult, I can go back to basics and do a spot check of how am I feeling, why, what can I do. So March is all about step 3, letting go self-will, pride, ego and fear, so you can open a door to courage, faith and confidence and asking for help. So bedrock and keystones, shifting sands and flimsy foundations. The art of fear less in recovery. So life did get very fearful at the end, because I never knew from one day to the next whether I was going to wake up. And that was the conclusion the physicians thought was true as well. They said, you don't know how ill you've been. So these days I fear less in recovery. So what is the bedrock of my life today? I put sobriety first, live the 12-step principles and practice them in all my affairs. Now the principles are 12 steps. Sounds a lot, but actually they all work depending on what's going on. They don't always work at all at the same time though. So I put sobriety first, live the 12-step principles and practice them in all my affairs. So it's not just about 12 steps in fellowship, it's 12 steps for living life. A firm foundation, no cracks, and no need to fear or rely on pride and ego today. If I built sobriety on the shifting priorities in other areas of my life, I will not be able to learn how to live the 12-step principles, and when I am diverted from this primary purpose of sobriety, I would then live on flimsy foundations one day at a time. So I did live on flimsy foundations for a long time. It was like a stone skimming across a pond. I was never sure how many hop, skips and a jump I would get out of doing whatever I was doing before I was on to the next thing. Skimming on the surface and not really getting into the deep of life. So part of the bedrock of my sobriety has been developing the ability to keep on learning life one day at a time with humility. Asking for help when the inner voice inside suggests I can take control and make the world the way I want it. So if my inner voice says, I want it my way, then I might be in trouble. So when I hear myself thinking, if only, why do I never win? Why are people ignoring me? Why don't people just do what I say? That is not the higher power. That would be me complaining about the world, and the world has done nothing to deserve my criticism. Make a new plan, Stan. Just set yourself free. Paul Simon's song. Set yourself free. You don't have to be coy, Roy. Blah, blah, blah. Set yourself free. So yes, just set myself free. Asking with humility, not grovelling. Not about grovelling at all. Asking with purpose and not for gossip. Asking if there is another way is always good today. So it doesn't have to be my way. If you have a yes, it does. If it's not about my way, it's about what is the best way for everyone. And although it would be nice to win the lottery, it wouldn't do me any good particularly. It would probably set me a whole new set of priorities, which would be very strange. So yes, bedrock is putting sober first. Then, like the keystones of an arch, in recovery are these 12-step principles, which can be lived day by day as we go. So if we built an arch of 12 out of 12 keystones, they're all keystones. If you're not taking account of all of them, the whole damn show can fall apart. And simply understanding that progress means we sometimes go quite a way forward and then double back when we lose our way. We can put the steps into practice when life experience is happening, and the steps are applicable to that life experience, but not all at the same time. So they all have emphasis in different endeavours. A daily reminder of my steps 1 to 3 always perks me up to acknowledge that I can have a bad day if I forget some of these. If I forget, and the simple meditation that follows. Step 1, powerless, is liberating, because I don't have to control everything, especially not drinking. So I'm liberated from it. I don't have to obsess anymore. Step 2, I can be restored to sanity, learning what I can and cannot do. And step 3 is about letting go things needing to go my way. So they don't have to go my way. Things need to go the way they need to for everyone, and not just me today. So there you go. If I get a lottery win, a fiver will do. is a bit of an encouragement to go more, but at the same time it's been split between many people. We will have all sorts of skills and abilities as we plough through our life, and they develop through time. So not everything is lost from the past. We still have all those skills and abilities. And I was getting skilled at wanting to be a road sweeper, but I got sacked because I had a broken leg and I hadn't told them. And then I was on the job with a big iron boot on, and I got the boot. It makes me laugh, actually, that did. Served me right. Somebody said, whatever you do, get a job, then people will get off your back. So I got a job as a road sweeper. It's just that the road sweeping corporation didn't want me with a broken leg. I was a liability, they said, and stupid, which of course I was. The most interesting and fascinating discovery that the 12 steps blend into life so well is because they do not interfere with our freedom of choice. In fact, our freedom of choice grows as we become more able in sobriety, and the skills we have come back to life as we come back to living a life on life's terms. Understanding our role and responsibilities in whatever endeavour we choose, we are very much more able to set boundaries and identify SWOT, SWOT, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So we can draw a box with those headings: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, called SWOT. I don't know where that came from. I think it was from, oh gosh, 1960s business magic, probably. Way before my time. But SWOT analysis, SWOT is very good. We learn much faster what we can do for ourselves and where we need to ask for help to get things done. Our mood, this is what I know. Our emotional and spiritual experience is always contingent on asking for help as we live one day at a time. It's not all about me, it's more likely all about us today. Yeah. So, the world doesn't revolve around me. I'm just part of it. A friend of mine is finding life very challenging and feels a strong desire to control just about every element, plan, organise, decide and get moving, and yet at the same time their emotional and spiritual condition is severely affected by trying to be all things to all men. And the more we try fit ourselves to a pattern that we determine on our own, the greater frustration, as the rest of the world refuses to cooperate and often refuses to engage because they cannot see their part in our plans, or they don't see how they should fit into our plans. And this works both ways round in a highly heated and fast-moving life. The urgency to get things sorted and get things back on track is often put first. And without referring to any emotional or spiritual extremes we impose on ourselves and other people, well, my friend is all about the nuts and bolts as well as the strategy for the rest of this century, and has not taken account of their feelings in the moment of now. Ignoring the emotions in the moment is back to standing on a precipice, the jumping off point, and it is not very desirable on any given day. So the jumping off point, do I jump into the next so-called right thing, which I think is right, which puts frustrations on me and I don't deal with my feelings, or jump back into how am I feeling right now and what do I need to do about it, emotional and spiritual. So when life is extreme, our feelings are extremes too. So we have difficulties being to sort out what the feelings are, let alone even considering our feelings, because things are moving too fast. The point is, if you are understanding your emotions and experiencing them as they are happening, you know when it's getting out of control on an emotional level. And better you do that first, because your feelings or mood directly impact on the way you think and what you do next. So mood impacts on thinking. Thinking rarely impacts on mood, until we're thinking so hard we're angry and frustrated, and we don't even see that we're angry and frustrated. We're so concentrated on the task. and then things go really wrong. Sometimes when we are under pressure, the suggestion is to suck it up and get on with it, whatever the it may be. Sucking it up, holding back the feelings and getting the job done can be done, if that is what needs to be done. And I put a question mark there. Every time we suppress our feelings in the moment, it's almost like putting them on deposit in a vault or bank, the bank of emotions in our head. But they're really extreme feelings we're putting in there, because we're just banking them up. And the more we put into the vault or bank of emotions, they accrue just like interest in any bank today. But unfortunately, it's not like the old days with interest rates, as any saver knows, and worse, if you're living in Cyprus, they're tantamount to stealing your money from you. Or we take no interest and the mountain grows within, and then we default as the pressure builds and we have no resources. So the default is an emotional breakdown. And at the last moment, as is often the case with those of us in recovery, we remember to ask for help. We remember to ask for help, and then the help. It cannot help because the mountain is just too big to resolve as we would wish. In less than one day, probably. So yes, suck it up for a day or two. Maybe, if you really have to. But if you set a pattern for yourself where you never deal with the emotions in the moment, the emotions will just build and build on the shifting sands and flimsy foundation of your sobriety. Just because you can do something, it does not mean you need to be doing that something. And that is the freedom and the conundrum we all live today. So just because you're good at something and you can get it done quick, if you keep on doing it, other people can't. So if you don't need to delegate because you're just a one-man band or one-woman band, it doesn't matter. But if you're continually putting yourself under the cosh or giving yourself a battering because you can't get it done on your own, and there are other people who maybe need to be involved, then we are giving ourselves a lot of grief when we don't need to. Anyway, where am I? Oh yeah. I am glad I'm not the only one being asked for help, because when things are big like this, which is to do with the whole of life, we need to go to different sources for information. Indeed, I always suggest professional help where it is needed, and then in fellowship ask as many people as there are available when dealing with tough decisions on any given day. Don't rely on one source. That's just as bad, because then you become codependent. And if an immediate answer is required, ask yourself, is it immediate because of procrastination by you, or procrastination by others, or by both? I know I can procrastinate. I've got a big pile of paperwork over there. I know my finances are alright because I can check them online, but I haven't looked through all the statements, which would be a very good idea. Sometimes we do have to deal with the problem in the moment because it is urgent and immediate, and then the spot check inventory is a very handy way to look back to where the breaking point occurred today, or where the breaking point is now occurring, and what can be done next time so we don't find ourselves climbing emotional mountains and falling from the top over and over again. So how am I feeling? Well, I'm alright actually. When we are on the outside and being asked for help, over the years in my careers, even though people asked me for help, they did not want to take the help, sometimes, and they didn't like the answers that were suggested. This was very rare, because I was quite good at what I did. But the problem is, can a person listen to you when they're under pressure? And actually, very often, because the request for help is at the last minute, the person asking is having trouble listening to anything which might help in the moment of now. Pride, ego and fear will take over very quickly in family, work and community life. So we all get on our high horses. When we feel our answer is best, in that pressure point, better to let that answer go and listen to the answers of those concerned. Even though it might take longer to get something done by asking, well, shall we do it your way then? Only by doing it that way do we enable ourselves to learn if it's a better way, or theirs is a worse way, and then they learn too, hopefully, unless they blame it all on us. But why didn't you take charge? You knew better. Well, actually, if I keep on taking charge, you will never learn. But that won't help them if you say it that way. They'll probably give you a punch on the nose. But what's important, courage, faith and confidence are built through time, changing our outlook and, most importantly, tending to our pastoral needs. And by that I mean understanding our emotions and how they fit with the reality of now is often the very last thing we think of as we are riding off in all directions at once. And the quote which I was reminded of: he jumped on his horse and rode off in all directions. That's more metaphorical than metaphysical in the ever-present, imperfectly perfect moment of now. I feel okay sitting on my metaphorical horse, which is quite stationary right now, and the horse needs no drink, and needs no one, most of all me, trying to direct it to go one way or another, just for today. So that was me. I've dropped all my papers. Doesn't matter, let them go. So there we go. We do not look after ourselves, but we feel we are worthy of life just by being very busy. And when people say, I need you to do something, you can say no. As Gandhi suggested, an emphatic no is better than a half-hearted yes. So if you continually try roll into things without giving due consideration for your feelings or the feelings of other people, there is no inclusion and no empathy very often, and people get very high on their horses, trying to look down at each other. It's like a spectacle of people staring down at each other and staring up and down at each other. There's no need to do that. Life is a learning experience, and most things we don't die of in the moment of now, unless a bus or a train or a car is coming in our direction, in which case, if someone says get out of the way, jump. Anyway, enough for today. The Serenity Prayer, which keeps me in balance most of the time, helps me get restored back to sanity most of the time. Serenity and peace in the moment of now. There have been spectacular moments of peace and serenity over the years, but never as continuously as these days in recovery. So life is good, bad and ugly, and that is never going to change. Sometimes it's very pressured, and that is not going to change. But what we can change is our attitude and our outlook. In the old days, fear, pride and ego stopping us from engaging or breaking us down, and we medicated all our anxieties away. Or these days, with a bit more courage, faith and confidence, engage, include, be a part of, and understand your emotions in the moment of now. Experience your emotions in the moment of now. That's what happens with fellowship and 12 principles of living. And sometimes we're angry, sometimes we're happy, sad, joyful, you name it. Every emotion is available today, right now, depending on your life situation. So to God or in good conscience, whatever works for you. And my higher power is truth, love and wisdom, manifested in the word God. Truth, love and wisdom in the moment of now. It's never the same one day to the next. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Moment to moment, minute to minute, hour to hour, and just for one day.